Takitakina mai ngā manu o te rangi. Karanga mai, karanga mai, karanga mai. Karanga mai ki tā tātou hui, e mihi nei, e tangi nei. Whano, whano, hara mai te Tokyo. Haumi e hui e, tāki e. Rātou mā e rere ana ki tua o te ārai, hara mai haere. Tātou ngā kānohi ora, ti hei mauri ora, and welcome back to the hui. Decades of sexual abuse, violence and neglect. That was the experience of hundreds of thousands of Kiwi children in state and faith-based care. The Royal Commission into Abuse in Care's report, Whanaketia, was released in July. It shone a light on the hidden abuse in more than 1,600 schools, hospitals, foster homes, orphanages, churches and boot camps. Next month, the government will apologise for the abuse committed against children in state care. Ahead of that apology, the Hui is replaying its special report. Rawani Pereira begins our coverage and a warning some viewers may find it distressing.
A momentous day. The closure of the longest, costliest inquiry ever undertaken in Aotearoa.
We didn't have hope 5.5 years ago, so yeah, a lot's happened since then.
The Royal Commission of Inquiry into the historic abuse of young people in state care.
You can't have a Royal Commission inquiry into something and pretend it didn't happen. I thought I was the only one. It was bigger, it was wider, it was broader than anyone expected. It brought to light one of the evil pasts of this country.
The Hui first met Eugene Ryder 7 years ago when he and others abused in state-run boys' homes spoke out.
And he took me into the showers and abused me for a long time, for over an hour. And it seemed like all night. He was a qualified social worker and a paedophile, all in one.
I had horrific, inhumane shit done to me. Where'd he go? You got no one to go to.
The government refused to hold an inquiry into the alleged abuse.
An inquiry into the systemic abuse of this country, I think it's well overdue myself. People knew this was happening. The problem is that we're too fast to bury things.
I felt free after that. I felt like a burden was lifted off my shoulders because now it was out in the open, and that instigated others to come forward.
And their bravery made all the difference. Not long after, they met with Jacinda Ardern.
These men are seeking a chance to tell their story and for there to be change in the way that we deal with young people who might be in the system now.
Ardern's government then committed to an inquiry.
Today, we are announcing that the inquiry into historic abuse in state care will be a Royal Commission. This, I think, is a significant step towards acknowledging and learning from the experiences of those who are abused in state care.
2018, the Commission began hearing from some of the 250,000 survivors. A few were able to tell their stories at Trauma Noho on Marae, but most survivors of abuse had to give their evidence in a courtroom setting. And for many, that was re-traumatising.
This whole setup sucks. It's like a courtroom. You're in, usually when you're sitting in the box, you're in trouble.
It's really important for us to have that feedback, and we can always do better.
The Royal Commission, in the eyes of some survivors, felt like the Crown. It looked like a government agency. It felt like a government agency, and so there's a lot of barriers that had to be broken down in order for survivors to come forward. I didn't like that there were judges and lawyers, the same judges and lawyers that represented the system that put us in those homes. That was one of the biggest challenges that I had. When I saw how the Royal Commission was panning out, I wanted to give up.
Eugene didn't give up, he kept going, supporting other survivors through the inquiry process as they gave confronting testimony after testimony.
I'm honoured to know each and every person that I've engaged with in this space, because I see their courage, I see their sadness, I see their fear. We could not have done this without each other's support.
Was it re-traumatising for you?
I only get re-traumatised when I think about the impact it had on my sister.
Loretta Ryder, Eugene's sister, she found the courage to tell her own story after hearing her brother speak out.
You know, this is a long time coming. I mean, that I can say what really happened.
Her whānau had no idea what she'd been through as a child.
My whole family are going to know. What are my children going to think of me? Am I going to say everything? Would they allow me to say everything? Yeah, the hardest thing I've done in my life.
Loretta gave her harrowing account to the inquiry 3 years ago. Much of her 2.5 hours of testimony is too graphic to repeat.
Well, my role at home, every lunchtime I had to go home and service my father's needs.
From the age of 8, Loretta was forced to have sex with her father, who was a minister in the church. Her mother did not protect her.
My mother was very abusive. She beat me constantly for stupid shit.
And at 12, Loretta was put into a girls' home where she was meant to be safe. But they allowed unsupervised visits from her father. The sexual abuse continued inside the home under the supposed care of those who ran the home. When she told authorities, they didn't listen.
Keep telling me I'm lying. How can you say that about your father, the man of the cloth? I wanted to end my life.
Caught up in a system of abuse, both Eugene and Loretta went from state care into gangs. Eugene joined Black Power at 15.
I saw love in the Black Power. I saw people that had been abused in the same homes I was in. So why wouldn't I become a part of them?
I'm Black Power. I am Black Power. Why? Because they're my whānau. They're the ones that were there for me. Majority of gang members that I know all been through the system. They all stuck together as one because it's a whānau.
There are those of us that made a living out of crime. We called it survival. It's not an excuse. It was our reality. We were young, vulnerable children. So it's sad to see the way our gang whānau are perceived in society.
United by trauma, rival gangs came together for the first time so the Commission could hear their stories. It's estimated 80 to 90% of mongrel mob and Black Power gang whānau have been in state care.
Even the term state care is ironic.
Eugene is now straddling two worlds, Still black power, but also heard in the halls of power.
I wanted to be a voice for anyone that felt they didn't have one. And there's still survivors that have yet to come forward, and we just hope that they see themselves in us.
After the break, truth brings reconciliation.
The hardest things is forgiveness.
And the power of letting go.
And I forgave him, and that set me free.
No mai hoki mai. The 6-year inquiry process was painful for survivors, but they remained hopeful the Royal Commission would deliver for them. Rawani Pereira with part 2 of Eugene and Loretta's story.
I go to the ngahere to calm my mind, to help me with my healing.
The impact of a lost childhood has affected Loretta Ryder's whole life.
I have never in my life known what it's like to be in love with somebody. I turned to drug abuse and alcohol to nullify the painful memories. Things could have been so different. The system just tore us all fucking apart. I'm the land, you're the sea.
The system that tore them apart has now brought Loretta and Eugene together.
But I had my brother there, you know, more or less holding my hand all the way through, protecting me within that Royal Commission process.
I love her to bits, and nothing's changed for me. She's still my hero.
This is beautiful.
The Eugene Ryder today walks proud, like my sister. Proud that, you know, we've uncovered something that's been kept a secret for so long, with the same purpose, to protect the children and our grandchildren. The hardest things is forgiveness. I met one of my perpetrators, and he was someone's koro, and I forgave him. And that set me free. It's not about dismissing what happened. It's not about no accountability. It's about growing. But I understand that there are some that won't, and I fully understand it. There's so much bad things happen to little kids that is unforgivable in some people's eyes.
I forgave my mum for everything that went on in my life. You know, my dad done things that he shouldn't have. But he's the one I love the most in this whole world, is my father. Because he may have done that, but not in a way, I don't know how to explain it.
Some people might struggle to comprehend that after what he had done to you.
Yeah, I love him. I don't care what anyone says.
Healing from trauma is a long journey.
The biggest thing for me was learning to forgive myself, to learn to love myself. Back then there was a whole lot of hate, a whole lot of distrust. I was one angry wahine. Now I walk around with my head high. I wear my moko kawai that represents my 6 boys on the top of my 2 girls and my mum and my dad. I wear that proud as. So this Loretta, I'm strong. I'm not afraid to speak up anymore. And I look at my brother now and all his mahi that he does, and I'm in awe of everything he does and says.
Throughout the process, the Royal Commission offered wellbeing support to survivors.
Wellbeing at the beginning came from a Western perspective. They started seeing that that doesn't work with all our whānau, especially our Māori whānau. The counselling thing, that was hard for me. When I was in care, those were the spaces where adults were alone with children. And that was, I still can't sit in a room with a counsellor. That was the opposite of well-being, what they were offering to me. And so I challenged them. And I said, my well-being evolves around going into the moana, getting kai and distributing it to those that can't. And then that became a reality. And I'd like to think that that helped change the Royal Commission's attitude about what well-being looks like.
Aotearoa's treatment of the young and vulnerable in state and faith-based care has been laid bare.
The one thing I see in common with all the survivors is that they want change. They want change in the system. Personally, I also want change among te iwi Māori. So my challenge is to our people as well, to look after our own children and not wait till they're in state care before they start thinking about them. It's become generational. There's now 5 or 6 generations that are going through state care.
How do we keep kids out of the system?
With love. By looking after them, by feeding them, by caring for them.
Do you think change will happen?
We all want change. It can't be happening all over again. I just hope we're not going to be speaking on deaf ears.
Thank you for coming and speaking truth to power today.
I'm only going to say one thing, and that is that your words have not fallen on deaf ears.
Eugene hopes the government will listen to the Commission and its recommendations to transform the country's care system.
I think the fact that this corridor has been brought out into the open will bring about change. How fast, I don't know. There are still children in care that are getting abused today. The reality is it's still there. The act of taking a child from their family is abuse in itself, and that still happens. But change can only come about if status quo is challenged. And we've managed to challenge the status quo. It's an opportunity for the government to play a major role in the lives of those that were abused in care and to stop any abuse that could happen in the future. They have that responsibility now. I just hope and pray that they make the right decisions.
E haere ake nei, coming up next. Māori were overrepresented in care homes and institutions, but so too were another community, our whaikaha whānau. We look at their story next. Hoki mai anō e te iwi. Speaking up about abuse is difficult, especially for a community that often feels like it has no voice, our whaikaha community. Gary Williams is a long-time disability advocate and also a state abuse survivor. He was an expert for the Royal Commission's inquiry, and Gary issued a challenge to the government when he spoke to reporter John Boynton.
The public doesn't often see these hospital training schools, as they're called. It prefers not to think about them.
They were the hidden hospitals where our most vulnerable suffered horrific abuse.
These are inspiring places where the close, misty horizons of the mentally retarded's world are slowly clearing.
Places where generations of children with disabilities were supposed to be kept safe by the state.
Most people were young, innocent children when they entered the system, and the system didn't care for them.
A number of survivors from the disabled community gave their testimony at the Royal Commission of Inquiry. Now, 2 years later, they wait to see what redress will be on the table from the government.
State abuse survivor Gary Williams, now a voice for his community.
The government can't just stand to one side and put this into a bottom room.
Gary only has one picture of himself as a child.
How old are you there, Gary?
I guess I'm about 5.
5?
Yes.
Do you think about what that young boy is going to be going through in just a few years?
I try not to.
It's not widely known that in the outskirts of Christchurch, on the hills overlooking Nelson, and on the plains near Levin are 3 special hospitals caring for 1,500 patients, most of them children.
In the 20th century, the parents of disabled children faced considerable pressure from society to place them into state institutions because they were deemed better places for them to be. But once in these institutions, many tamariki would never leave.
Some patients are severely subnormal and need the constant care of the nursing staff.
Parents try to fight the expectation that they should put children with disabilities into institutions. However, in 1953, a government committee led by Dr. Robert Aiken recommended further expansion of hospitals for disabled children.
I don't give people up to care, not because they want to, but because they're convinced that this is the best option for everybody.
Gary first entered state care at 13 because he had cerebral palsy. He was sent from his East Coast home to the Pukeora Sanatorium in Hawke's Bay.
I came from a world where I wasn't considered disabled. I was just part of the community. I was somebody's dad, somebody's moko.
Gary spent 6 years at the sanatorium.
It was the first time that I really understood what it was like to be a disabled person.
A place where Gary says patients were treated like prisoners.
They used to call us patients or inmates.
Inmates?
Yes, I used to go, I'm not an inmate because I haven't committed a crime. I haven't done anything wrong, but here I am. There was physical and sexual abuse, psychological abuse, a loss of identity for money.
In total, Gary would spend 26 years in different residential facilities.
I convinced myself that I gave informed consent to live this way because there were no other alternatives for me.
So the system convinced you that you were consenting to living that way?
Yes.
But somehow Gary never let the system stop him. Instead, he's become a leader for the disabled community, fighting to change the care structures put in place by the state.
We know that they don't actually work, and we know that they put people in danger.
In the last few years, he's again been an advocate for his community, as an expert on the Royal Commission of Inquiry.
My biggest goal was to make sure that the voice of disabled people was heard. Our voices might make other people uncomfortable because we can articulate a view of the world that they probably never considered before.
He's heard the abuse suffered by people with disabilities in places such as hospitals, schools and care homes.
Some survivors just want an apology from the state or faith-based organisations to admit that they got it wrong. Some people want compensation, so lots of survivors are in poverty.
Gary contributed to the final Whanaketia report and its recommendations.
What is your challenge to the government, Gary?
I would like the government to implement all the recommendations in the report. Just get on with the job and make it right for survivors and their partner.
Get on with the job?
Yeah, just get on with it. Don't look for reasons not to do it, because that will be, in my view, another form of abuse by the state.
Nō reira, e te hunga kimi whakawhirinakitanga i te wā o te porotaika. Kia manawa titi rawa te manawa nui i te ao nei e. Ngā manaakitanga nui kia koutou katoa. And if those powerful stories from Eugene, Loretta and Gary have raised any issues for you, there are many agencies offering help and support, including specialist depression and sexual abuse helplines. Or if you need to talk to someone, call or text 1737 at any time. That's 1737. Nā reira, hei tērā wiki, next week on The Hui.
The emergency department at New Zealand's busiest hospital has been called unsafe for patients in a damning new report.
A patient who died in the waiting room had been waiting for 3 hours.
Deaths in our emergency departments.
The safest wait is the shortest wait.
Hospitals under pressure.
It's not fit for our modern models of care.
You say cut back, we say fight back.
When a system is under strain, it's the most marginalised groups that are probably going to fare the worst.
Or is there not enough care in ED?
You need to fix what's broken, and to me it's very broken.
That is our hui tonight. We'll have another hui kōrero a tērā wiki. Kia mau ki te tūranga o Taputapu Ātea. Haumi e hui e, tā iki e.
Nā te puna whakatongarewa, te hui, i tautoko.